This is started.
Okay. So good afternoon, everyone. I welcome you all to this first class on the fourth paper, which is termed British Poetry and Drama, 14th to 17th century. And this is the first class, the introductory class. So I hope that you all have this soft copy with you, which is easily available on the SOL website. I'm also sharing from the same site. You can download the file or you can directly read from it. But for now, please follow what I'm saying in the class. So as you can see, we'll start with the first unit. And the first unit is about Geoffrey Chaucer, the great English poet. In fact, Geoffrey Chaucer is considered to be the first English poet of any kind of prominence. So the general prologue to the Canterbury Tales, I hope everyone can see the screen very, very clearly. I'll just increase the file size here. So and then we'll start this. There's a brief introduction of Chaucer, who's as is known as the father of English poetry, because from him great English poetry started. And his best known work till date is, of course, the Canterbury Tales. So Chaucer, whose time span was from 1343 to 1400, is one of the earliest known great poets to write in English. Best known for his lengthy work, The Canterbury Tales, he is often referred to as the father of English literature and also the father of English poetry, because he created one of the best things in English literary columns, that is the Canterbury Tales. Always remember his major work is the Canterbury Tales, and we will just read the general prologue. Within our syllabus, we don't have the whole book. We just have the general prologue of the book. Okay. Writing in Middle English, Chaucer makes liberal use of Latin and French words too. So he was a great scholar. He knew English, he knew Latin, he knew French, and he could speak Italian as well. So within his work, you'll see use of Latin words, use of French words, use of Italian words, and it makes it different than what kind of English we read today. You may come across many words that are no longer in use. In his poetry, when we read his poetry, you'll see that there are many words that have been used that are no longer used in English language. As we know, it is today such as word like full used very. Now I can see there are a number of people waiting in the lobby. Just give me 1 minute. I'll give them entry. Otherwise, there'll be constant notifications coming up. Just give me 1 minute. If there's any question, you can ask in the chat box or in the Q&A section. I can see a number of hands here. I don't know why the hands are raised. If there's any question before I start, you can ask in the chat box. If there is anyone who wishes to ask a question, please ask in the chat box. Or if it is not visible, just give me 1 minute. I'm just letting the others in. If you have any question, you can write it in the chat box. Anyways, so let's start. I've started discussing about Geoffrey Chaucer. So Geoffrey Chaucer's major work, as I said, was Canterbury Tales, and he was very proficient in English, of course, and also in Latin, French, and Italian. So from Canterbury Tales, you just follow on the second paragraph. You have a general prologue, which is like an introduction to the Canterbury Tales, which we shall be reading in brief within our syllabus. You are required to read the text in original. So everyone, please try to read the text and try to understand what is present within the general prologue. To make the task of reading Chaucer a bit easier, it would be advisable to use a good annotated edition of the prescribed text. So you can use a good book, and it is easily available on internet as well. So please read the general prologue as we read along in the classes as well. So what is a general prologue? A general prologue is an introduction to Chaucer's very long narrative poem, The Canterbury Tales. So Canterbury Tales जो है इसका एक introduction is present in the general prologue. Try to understand that prologue is a kind of introduction before we begin any work. Here, Chaucer introduces us to each of the 29 pilgrims who have gathered together to an inn in South Wark to set off on a pilgrimage to Canterbury the next morning. The reason why this work was written, the Canterbury Tales, is about a group of pilgrims, about 29 pilgrims. Pilgrims are people who are going to visit holy places. Pilgrims are people who go to visit nice places where there are gods and other kinds of beliefs. So here also there are 29 pilgrims. The basic story here is there are 29 pilgrims going on a pilgrimage to visit the pilgrimage to Canterbury, and they are sitting in a particular hotel and telling about the tales. This collection of tales is known as Canterbury Tales. Chaucer himself joins them and becomes the 30th pilgrim in the group. Chaucer himself, who is the author, is also one of the pilgrim within these collection of pilgrims. The pilgrims are people who go to holy places because they think that visiting holy places will make their lives better and will give them some sort of a blessing from the holy God. The pilgrims are drawn from all walks of life. Now, who are these pilgrims? The 29 pilgrims are the people who do different works in the society. Some of them belong to the church. Some of them are common people. Some of them are small technicians. Some of them are small craftsmen. Gives us almost a cross section of the 14th century society. The pilgrim Chaucer takes upon himself the job of describing each and every pilgrim in the group. In the general prologue, there is a description of each and every pilgrim. Each and every pilgrim is described, what he or she does in the society it's described, and what is the importance of the existence is described. So basically, general prologue to Canterbury Tales is a kind of a commentary on the society that existing during the 15th century. What did the 15th century life look like was part of Chaucer's general prologue to Canterbury Tales. What were the various professions that people engaged in? What were the socioeconomic conditions? Did religion and the church play a significant role in people's lives? In the analysis of general prologue, there are just some of the issues. So who are these people? What were their general role? And what they used to do in this life was something that was talked about in general prologue. Now there's a brief description about Chaucer's England. What kind of England, what kind of a country England was so many centuries back. Remember, this was the 15th century, about 700 to 800 years ago when this existed. So we need to think and imagine a lot because it was, of course, very different from what we see now. Now it is a technologically driven world. That time there was no technology, there was no scientific progress, and people were dependent on a lot of things. You may take one look at Chaucer's poetry and wonder why you are expected to read it. Now, what I'm expecting that you people will read the first paragraph here. Everyone needs to read the first paragraph here, and then I'm giving you 2 minutes to read this first paragraph, after which I will again resume and you all can ask questions, or I will describe what is being said in the first paragraph of what is visible to you all. So everyone, please read the first paragraph of Chaucer's England, and I will make you understand what is or what the author is saying here. I'm giving you 2 minutes here. I'm taking a 2-minute break, and everyone needs to read the first paragraph very, very intelligently or very, very attentively. Please read the first paragraph. Everyone, please read the first paragraph of Chaucer's England that is visible on your screen. Everyone, please read the first paragraph of Chaucer's England.
Hello. Due to technical issue, you have to wait for 5 to 10 minutes. Please wait. Sir will come soon. Okay. Thanks.
Okay, I hope that everyone can see me and hear me very, very clearly now.
Yes,
So,
sir. Yes, sir. You are with
okay,
you.
thank you. So,
Carry on, sir.
sorry for the interruption. So, as I was saying that Chaucer's England, this is a particular page that I was asking you to read, the kind of an introduction to what Chaucer had contributed and what England looked like during those times. So you may take one look at Chaucer's poetry and wonder why you are expected to read it. Not only is the English archaic and therefore also beyond easy comprehension, but you may also ever think that how did it wrote almost 6 centuries ago. So about 600 or 700 years ago, how did someone write a poetry like this? And the most difficult part is that you will find that many words are there which are very difficult to understand. Many words are there which you will not find easy. So let's look at the second paragraph here. As a result of Norman conquest, what happened in Norman conquest? This took place in 1066, and the French became the language of law and administration in 13th century. So during this time, the France, the French culture and the French civilization had actually taken over the English ones. So English gradually lost its holds and prestige. Of course, it was still the spoken language, but was less used for educational purposes. Gradually, it lost even the standard spellings that had evolved in the late Anglo-Saxon times. It came to be written more phonetically according to the local dialects. To this English Chaucer grafted many French words and few words of Latin and Italian too. His English became close to modern English, which begins taking shape around the 16th century. But Chaucer takes the credit for being one of the first earliest known and great poets to write in English instead of French and Latin, which was supposed to be the language of the literates. So he chose a form of English that was a mixture of French and Italian. So his language is quite different. Remember, he was writing at a time after the Norman conquest in 1066. There was a gradual encroachment of the French culture over the English ones. So he was the person who, for the first time, chose to write in English and also chose to write in something that was a mixture of English, French, and Italian. That is why his words are very, very difficult. And the words that he uses during those times are no longer used in English. But Chaucer takes the credit for being one of the first five earliest known and the great poets to write in English instead of French and Latin, which was supposed to be the language of the literates. Chaucer's contribution to the English language, therefore, becomes one of the most important reasons for reading his poetry. Once you do get down to reading Chaucer, and especially the General Prologue, which is prescribed in your course, you will realize that though not easy, it is also not very difficult. It is very interesting, in fact. As you read on, another fact that emerges is the surprising extent to which you will be able to identify with the satirical spirit of his work. So within it, there's a lot of satire. Satire means it's criticizes. It criticizes certain tendencies, it criticizes certain occupations, it criticizes human beings, and criticizes certain things which are present within human beings which are not at all good. So General Prologue is a collection of different characters who belong to different ranks in the society, different professions of society, and everywhere you will find that they are trying to change things and they are trying to challenge certain things. So there are someone's wife, there is someone as a male person, there is someone as a female person who takes things and does different other things. Chaucer sure was one poet who could look very far ahead of his times to give us one of the earliest feminists. So early, in fact, that feminism as a movement was still many years away. This is true of the General Prologue as well, which is a collection of pen portraits. In these portraits, you will find that atmosphere being reflected is something close to what it is in our present century. The same kind of questioning, spirit, skepticism, loss of faith, increase in corruption. These are some of the themes that he talks about. Greed, लालच जिसे हिंदी में कहते हैं लालच or corruption, all these things that were present in that kind of society has been presented by Chaucer in a very distinct manner. He has presented these things in a very beautiful manner. Desire for upward mobility. Desire for upward mobility means desire to become rich, desire to have a better life, desire to have a better mode of living, desire to have a better house, desire to wear better clothes can be seen in Chaucer's portrait. So General Prologue is a collection of different characters who present different aspects of society, present different good aspects and also present certain bad aspects of society. By now, you must be curious to know more about an age which is far, far back, yet so similar to our own. So interestingly, why is Chaucer even relevant today? Is because what Chaucer was doing so many years back is relevant even now. Even now, we face similar kinds of challenges, similar kinds of problems, similar kinds of things that are happening with us. We are facing with the problem of corruption. We are facing the problem of greedy people. We are facing with the problem of different other kinds of things. So moreover, for the purpose of analyzing Chaucer's poetry, it is the next logical step. We all know that the literature of a period reflects that particular age, and the work under consideration is a satire, as Chaucer's Canterbury Tales is. It becomes all the more necessary for us to find out more about the age which is being thus exposed and satirized. So Canterbury Tales is a kind of a tale which talks about human in general and also about the human society, about what kind of people we live with or what kind of people are inhabiting this particular space called society. So the Middle Ages and these changes are present everywhere. So there are a lot of political developments that took place, which has been talked about here. These are all part of the background. And here you have the labor class. I want you to all read the first paragraph of the labor class and understand what was happening to the rich people and to the people who were poor during those times, because these stories have been reflected in the general prologue as well. In the general prologue also, you'll find these kind of stories. You'll find people who belong to the labor class. They are talking about their problems. They're talking about their struggles. They're trying to challenge this kind of a hierarchy where they are not getting their basic minimum wages and are being subjected to excruciating forms of inhuman labor. So just read the first paragraph of the labor class, and I'm giving you 2 minutes here. Everyone, please obediently read it, and then I'll continue talking about the labors, and then we move on towards the text. Everyone, please read. I'm giving you 2 minutes here. Okay, I hope you have all read it. So it is about the labor class, what was happening to them, and the labor this time, the labor classes were also raising in revolt. They were also asking for equal wages. They were also asking for equal rights, just like the people of the other times were demanding. So trade unionism and labor movements of the later years were foreshadowed, and all these things have been documented or have been presented by Chaucer in this general prologue. For 3 days, England had a bitter taste of the fury of the discontented masses. Many people were massacred. The poor peasants, being denied even the minimum sustenance, attacked the house of the rich in a fit of rage. John of Gaunt's palace was razed to the ground. So there was an extensive battle and extensive revolt, and the poor people wanted their rights, the poor peasants wanted their rights, and that is why they started attacking the rich people. John of Gaunt's palace was razed to the ground. The king made a show of promise of granting them pardon, but once the rebels had returned back home, he revoked his orders, and the following widespread execution of the rebels all over England. But they could not get their rights because the king was against them, and the king had started killing them. Chaucer's plowman in the general prologue is indeed an ideal and not factual portrait of a member of the laboring class. So the plowman's tale, which is present within general prologue, refers to all these sufferings of the labor classes. This general prologue presents the sufferings of the labor classes, the middle classes, the rich people, and all the others who are actually contributing in some way to the creation and the sustenance of the society. Next, you have the rising middle class. What is the middle class doing during this time? While we see such abject poverty on the one hand, on the other there was sudden influx of wealth due to growing trade and commerce. So the middle class during this time had earned an amount of money out of trade and commerce, and they had become suddenly rich. And also due to plundering brought from the various wars. There were many wars that were happening, and the middle classes had got a lot of money out of this because the middle classes are neither poor nor very rich. So they are mostly taking away this opportunity of making quick money. People apart from the aristocracy, uh, people or landed gentry were now becoming rich. The feudal setup was breaking up, thus leading to fluidity in classes and a greater social mobility. Now it was not necessary for us that serf would remain a serf. So because of trade and commerce, increase of trade and commerce, there was an extra amount of wealth, an extra amount of money that was flowing in within the country. So middle class was getting richer because they were the people who did trade and commerce. They engaged themselves in this kind of businesses. So they were getting richer by these things. Chaucer, too, in the general prologue, had included various people to represent these rising merchant classes. There's the shipman, the five guildsmen, the wife of Bath. All these people represent this kind of middle class people. The manciple, the merchant, and so on are all part of general prologue. So they are rich people, and they are trying to exploit the poorers and exploit the opportunity so that they could they could get a lot of money out of these kind of resources. But one interesting fact about these people is that they seem to be indulging in a lot of extravagances. What one thing happens with middle class people is that when they get a lot of money, they start spending it, and they start spending in making their lives better. They engage in a lot of extravagance. Extravagances means show. They try to show a lot, that we have this much, we have that much, we can do this and that. As far as the five guildsmen are concerned, Chaucer is careful to point out that they are dressed above their station, having even their knives tipped with silver, thus drawing our attention to a very interesting development of the times. Extravagance in the area of dress and of food had grown to disgusting terms. Extravagance was very much present amongst the middle classes. That extravagance means something that is shown off more importantly, that you show off a lot, be much more than what you have. Suppose you earn 5,000 rupees, but you try to show that you are earning about 1 lakh rupees or 2 lakh rupees, and you spend in things which are not necessary. That becomes extravagance. That shows your extravagant nature. In fact, the literature of the times is full of humorous and satirical descriptions of the clothes people wore and the food they ate. So they were spending a lot on wearing, fashion, food, and other things. To control the situation, the parliament had issued an ordinance regulating the kind of clothing for all ranks of society, and also for regulating the diets of certain classes in society. Of course, one need not add that the system did not work, and so we find Chaucer's guildsmen flourishing their silver-tipped knives quite brazenly. So these were the middle class people who were actually trying to exploit the situation and make money very, very quickly. Then the third factor was the ecclesiasts, the people who work in the churches, the fathers, the people who belong to the churches, the friars, the reeve, the monks, all these people are part of the church. They are also part of the Canterbury Tales, the general part of the Canterbury Tales. So they were the people who had become corrupt. So they were selling religion for their own benefits. Society in Chaucer's times were becoming increasingly materialistic, and people did not fail to use dishonest means. So even if these people were kind of religious and they tried to preach the idea of virtue and religion, it was seen that they were the most corrupt people of those times. The Reeve and the Manciple are just two of the many examples that Chaucer's gallery who can illustrate the point. But dishonesty and corruption at the level of the church had become so rampant that frequently the satirist aimed to bark at this institution of 14th century England. Even Chaucer is most critical of the ecclesiastical characters among his pilgrims, and not without reasons. The churchmen who preached a spirit of sacrifice had become greedy and self seeking. So the church was extremely greedy during this time. The church was extremely money minded during this time. And all these people who belonged to the church, the friars, the monks, the father, all these were in some way or the other trying to make money. Now look at the spread of literacy. During this time, there was an amount of literacy, but it was not very, very good. There was increase in schooling. So just read the first 5 paragraphs of this particular topic called spread of literacy. So just read the first 5 lines of this paragraph of spread of literacy. I'm again giving you 2 minutes, after which I shall again resume. So everyone, please read the first 5 lines of spread of literacy, this particular paragraph. Okay, I hope you have read it till now. So there was a printing press, and one important thing, it was a tedious and laborious process that scribes were especially employed for the purpose. Often they made mistakes, and if a copy was made from a copy, these mistakes were carried further. So literacy was also an important factor here. People wanted to read, people wanted to write, and in Canterbury Tales, all of these things has been used. And in the last paragraph, you can see in the Canterbury Tales, Chaucer puts before us a picture of a society in which medieval ideas were breaking down. And as Dudley French writes, these ideas had become so old fashioned that only a few quixotic persons any longer allowed them to interfere with their materialistic purposes. Excitement and apprehension about the coming age, the nostalgia for the passing values are both mingled in the Canterbury Tales to make it a true picture of 14th century England. So this is a very faithful picture, this very faithful thing, which has been presented in Canterbury Tales. Now you have Chaucer's life and works. So briefly, there's about his life when he was born. He was born in 1343 and he passed away in 1400. A very well-learned person, though had very humble beginnings, but Chaucer had mastery over several languages, including French, Italian, Latin, and also was a great practitioner of English poetry. Is also known as the father of English poetry. I'm not reading it. I'm not reading the whole part. You can read it yourself. You don't need to remember everything. His literary career was very long. Besides besides the greatest writing of Chaucer, Canterbury Tales, he has written many other things like Roma de la Rose and Complaint to His Lady, the Book of the Duchess, and all these things. Pure Tragedies, Complaint of the Mars, Troilus and Cresside, The Legend of Good Women. All these things have been written by him, but till date, the most famous work of his is definitely the Canterbury Tales. Now, an introduction to the General Prologue. This is chapter number 3 of Unit 1. The plan of Canterbury Tales, as I said, is a group of pilgrims going on a pilgrimage and they telling their own tales. There are 29 pilgrims, and it was decided that they will tell one tale, one story while they're going, and one tale while coming back from the pilgrimage. So this is the pilgrimage of Thomas A. Beckett at Southwark, and they were visiting this shrine of Thomas A. Beckett. The plan of the Canterbury Tales might have been conceived earlier, but was adopted around the year 1386, and General Prologue was probably written in the year 1387. Some of the tales have been dated till the year 1394, but not later than that the work as it stands today is still incomplete. Already, while writing The Legend of Good Women, we see Chaucer trying to link up a number of stories together. But the theme of the legend was, however, too monotonous for the liking of a man whose distinctive genius was for variety. It is not surprising, therefore, that the moment the idea of a pilgrimage lent itself to Chaucer's imagination to act as a linking device for a collection of variety of stories, he promptly laid aside the writing, the legend, and plunged straight into the Canterbury Tales. The framework. Where did he get this idea of writing these tales, and what is this tale telling about? There's a framework here. How did he develop this framework of a group of pilgrims going on a pilgrimage and telling their own life stories? How did he get this idea? The device of a pilgrimage to link up a collection of tales is part of a general tradition of framed story or a series of tales enclosed within narrative. The idea had been used by many writers all over the world, and perhaps the earliest example was that of Panchatantra from India. This idea of telling your stories or telling your life experiences in form of a story has originally been used in Panchatantra from India. It has been used by uh, the Panchatantra mode of storytelling. There were several such tales in circulation. For example, Spanish Conde Licanor, Juan Manuel, Decameron is some by Giovanni Boccaccio, is something that has inspired, believed to have inspired Chaucer in writing such a tale, or at least writing the framework of this tale, to which Chaucer's own idea of a pilgrimage is often traced, and then Italian novel of Giovanni Cercambi, which shows a very even greater similarity to the Canterbury Tales. There is no concrete evidence which proves that Chaucer possessed any of the above mentioned works or used them at all for his stories. On the other hand, there is no reason that prevents us from believing that the idea might have come to him as an entirely original one. It can be his original idea as well. It can be something that he himself thought about, something that was unique. The sight of the pilgrims traveling along the road to Canterbury, making merry as they went, often accompanied by sounds of bagpipes, must have been a similar familiar sight to him. So he might have this idea within his mind that these kind of pilgrims would have had their own stories. A pilgrimage as a framework device. The occasion for the tales is a pilgrimage to the shrine of Thomas A. Beckett, who had been murdered in 1170. So this was the pilgrim site where they were going to, and his name was Thomas A. Beckett, and the shrine was in the memory of Thomas A. Beckett, who was murdered by a group of people and canonized 3 weeks later, and had by Chaucer's time become a national saint. Now the cross section of the society. He presents a very important cross section society, which by now is very, very clear to you. So we have seen how the device of the pilgrimage to link up a collection of tales is part of a general tradition of a framed story or a series of tales enclosed within a narrative. But Canterbury Tales different than most of the classical or medieval examples we can find, because here the framework does not remain merely a mechanical device to link the stories. In fact, it is means of maintaining smooth flow of action and also of keeping a certain group of people engaged quite naturally in a certain form of entertainment. So there are a group of people belonging to different spheres of life, belonging to different phases of life, and when they come together, they tell about their experiences of life. And this brilliant work, this brilliant collection, this brilliant compendium of different people talking here is about a collection of entertainment, a collection of knowledge, and other important things. So it's a cross section of society which has been presented within the Canterbury Tales.
Due to some technical problem, class will resume after some time. due to some technical problem, class will not continue today. Sir will complete this topic in next class, that is